Let's prepare our machines for WordPress development. If you already have things set up and prefer your own kind of environment, then you're free to skip this lecture. If not, then just follow along. I'll try my best to explain everything. The very first thing we need is a development environment. There are various environments out there, but the one I recommend is XAMPP. It's free and constantly updated with the latest versions of software for web development. To download XAMPP, you'll need to visit the site apachefriends.org. I'll provide a link to this site in the resource section of this lecture. Just a side note, most sites I talk about will be provided in the resource section of each lecture, so just be aware of that. You should see something similar to what I see. XAMPP is a program that bundles various programs together. Let's take a deeper look at these programs. The very first program is Apache. The official Apache site is apache.org. Apache is actually an open source software foundation that provides free programs for everyone. One of their most popular programs is the HTTP server. We can find this program under projects. You'll find a link to the HTTP server project. This program allows you to turn your computer into a server that accepts and sends requests. It's very lightweight and easy to use. The next piece of software is MariaDB. You can find more information about this software at mariadb.org. MariaDB is a database that allows you to store data about anything you want. There are all kinds of databases out there, but the most popular choices are either Oracle or MySQL. MySQL and MariaDB are the two databases WordPress is 100% compatible with. So you may be wondering, why are we installing MariaDB instead of MySQL? Well, there's a lot of business politics that I don't want to dive too much into because it's really boring, but here's the overall gist of it. MySQL has seen very little development in recent years. A lot of developers have decided to fork MySQL and continue developing it under a new name, which is MariaDB. Forking is just a fancy term for downloading open source code and then adding onto it. Essentially, MariaDB is MySQL, but with more features and is constantly updated. So most code that you write for MySQL will also be compatible with MariaDB and vice versa. I promise that all code we write will be compatible with both MariaDB and MySQL 100%. The last piece of software is PHP. You can find the official PHP site at php.net. PHP is the programming language WordPress is built with. I assume you already know about PHP, so I won't be talking about it. You'll notice that Perl is also bundled, but we won't be using Perl at all, so you don't have to worry about that. The X in XAMPP just stands for the operating system, implying that XAMPP is cross-compatible with all operating systems. Let's download and install XAMPP. There are various versions of XAMPP, but I prefer the one that comes with PHP 7.1. People ask me all the time what version of PHP they should be using, and I always recommend PHP 7, even if they're working with WordPress, simply because PHP 7 is fast and allows for faster processing times, which is great for development. Let me show you something real quick. Go to the WordPress.org site, and I want you to click the About link. On this side, you'll find a page called Requirements. WordPress will recommend you work with PHP 7. If you read a little further, you'll find that the absolute minimum version you need to run WordPress is PHP 5.2.4. A lot of hosts will still use PHP 5.2 or PHP 5.3, but I'm going to recommend that you don't develop for these versions of PHP. It may seem like you're limiting the amount of clients you'll work with, but you save yourself a huge headache by avoiding these versions. The reason being is that these versions are no longer supported by PHP. These versions have security, vulnerabilities, and exploitations. Personally, I only develop plugins and themes that are compatible with PHP 5.6 and up. A lot of developers, such as Muffin Group and Theme Fusion, don't even support these lower versions, and yet they still receive a lot of clients. In the end, it's up to you. All code we write will be compatible with PHP versions 5.6 and up. In case you were curious, You can also check out this interesting link called Statistics. This page shows information about the setup most hosts use and what versions of each software they're using. This should give you a good idea about what the market is like. Alright, let's move on. Download and install XAMPP. And just go through the default settings as they usually will suit you best. I've already installed XAMPP. You can open up the control panel by searching for something called XAMPP Control Panel. The great thing about using XAMPP is that it automatically bundles and configures most of the software you need to run a local development environment. It's fast and easy. You'll notice that XAMPP installs other programs such as FileZilla, Mercury, and Tomcat. We won't be using these softwares, so you don't need to worry about what these do and what they're for. To boot the server, you need to turn on Apache and MySQL. You should see these modules highlighted in green, indicating that these modules have successfully been turned on and are currently running. If you don't, then be sure to read the log below and ask for support at the ApacheFriends.org site. We can test to see if everything's working by clicking the admin button inside the Apache row. You'll be taken to localhost. You may see a welcome message. I don't, because I deleted those files. I'll show you where to delete those files in just a moment. Let's set up the database first. Open up the control panel again and click the admin button in the MySQL row. You'll be taken to a page called PHPMyAdmin. Personally, I don't like PHPMyAdmin because it is a web script almost like WordPress. PHPMyAdmin is a way to manage and view your database inside your browser. Just like any other script, this script will load JavaScript, CSS, and handle all requests with PHP. It works, but it tends to be very slow at times because you have to wait for the page to load to know whether or not your request was successful or not. I prefer to use something called HeidiSQL, which can be found at HeidiSQL.com. You can go to the download section and just download the appropriate download for your operating system. Once installed, you can open it up like so. HeidiSQL is similar to PHPMyAdmin, except it is written in a language called Object Pascal, which is a bit faster than PHP and can execute MySQL queries so much faster. Plus, there are more features with this software, which is great. It'll take some time to get used to this, but I promise it'll be worth it. Using HeidiSQL is pretty simple. First, you need to create a new session. Name it whatever you want. I'll be naming mine localhost. A lot of the default settings are pretty good. The host should be 127.0.0.1, which is the IP of the localhost. The username is root and the password is empty. This user is automatically created for you when you installed XAMPP. Everything else is fine. Make sure to save and then click open. You'll notice that I already have a few databases set up. Let's create a new database. You simply right-click in the left column and under Create, click Database. You'll be presented with two options: the name of the database and the collation. The name we'll be using is Udemy, and the collation will be UTF-8 MB4 General CI. The collation determines how characters are sorted and compared. For example, you can have the letter A as uppercase or lowercase, which gets displayed first. What about characters where there's an accent above the letter A? As you can see, there are dozens of collations with their own set of rules on how to compare characters. For this course, we'll be using UTF-8 MB4 General CI because it's been tested to be highly performant and accurate. It works with all characters, including Chinese, Japanese, and so much more. Click OK, and that's it. And you can click on your database in the left-hand column, and you'll notice that it's empty. We can now install WordPress. In the previous lecture, you should have downloaded WordPress. If you haven't, then do so now. You should have downloaded a zip file. Have that file in hand. From your control panel, click on the Explore button. This is where XAMPP is installed. All files that are served from the server to your browser is located in the htdocs folder. htdocs stands for Hypertext Documents. This folder is very important as we will be working inside it throughout most of this course. Feel free to delete any default files inside this folder. You don't need them. I already have some files here as I use XAMPP daily for web development. So open up your zip file and drag and drop the files from the zip file into this htdocs folder. I'm going to rename this from WordPress to Udemy. We can now visit this by opening up the browser and navigating to localhost Udemy. You'll be asked to select your language. I'll be using English. Select whatever language suits you best. And you'll be told that wp-config.php file isn't available. WordPress will then ask you if you'd like to create this file now. Let's do so. The database name is Udemy, and the username is root. There is no password, and we'll leave the rest as is. The table prefix will simply be prepended to whatever is in the field next to the database names. WordPress will generate a little over 10 different tables for your site. The names it generates tend to be very simple and basic. This can cause issues if you already have tables inside your database. To avoid naming complex, you can set a prefix to give each table name a unique name. For example, there is a table named post. If you set the prefix to WP_, then the new name will be WP_post. You should always be mindful of this setting as we'll be using it ourselves in the future. For now, I'm going to leave this as is, which is WP_. If you don't understand, that's fine. You'll understand what I mean in a future lecture. Run the installation and you should see a success message. You'll be then asked to input some basic details about your site and set up a user account. Input whatever details you want. You can just copy what I put if you'd like. Once you're finished, you should see a success message and you can now log in. We're pretty much done. There's one last thing I want you to do before we finish things up here. Make sure you're logged in. Go to Settings Permalinks. Change the permalink settings to post name. This will make our URLs easy to read. Congratulations. You've successfully installed everything you need. That was a lot to go through, but hopefully you got through it.